Mes ginsimės iki paskutinės minutės. Mes ginsim savo radiją ir televiziją.
Ta naktį buvo paleisti 7 šūviai į Lietuvos laisvę ir nepriklausomybę.
40 dienų paieškų pagaliau surasta dingusi Vajagų šeima.
2 million residents of the Baltic states linked hands to protest not only what happened 50 years ago, but to send a message of defiance.
Kupreliškis was a kind of place where everybody knew each other. A small, quiet Lithuanian village. Here, life moved at a slow, predictable pace. Families worked the land, children walked to school together, and the biggest concerns were the changing of the seasons and the next harvest. But in the spring of 1995, a young man, Mindaugas Daunoras, intelligent, hardworking, and matured beyond his years, was feeling uneasy. His whole family, stepfather Jurgis Vajega, his mother Danutė, and their 10-year-old daughter Ruta, Mindaugas' sister, haven't returned from Latvia. The whole household went to Latvia, a common trip at a time, especially for rural families looking to buy or sell goods. They were expected to return in 3 days, but now Mindaugas was pacing around his home. It was the 4th day since they went on that trip. But Mindaugas decided that he must be strong and not to worry himself. His father knows what he's doing, and there is a lot to do around the house. Despite his family absence, he attended school daily, tended to the family farm, and even continued to deliver milk to the local dairy. His dedication earned him admiration from the entire village. Mindaugas has always been a gifted student. He excelled in every subject, particularly in mathematics and physics. His teachers described him as polite, reserved, and introspective. He wrote poetry about the soul, enjoyed drawing, and had even secured early admission to Kaunas University of Technology. He was the kind of son every parent would dream of, brilliant, ambitious, and endlessly diligent. But days turned to weeks. His family still did not return. He kept repeating that he must be strong in the wake of this disappearance. While most would expect a son to be overwhelmed with anxiety and grief, Mindaugas tried to remain composed. He told his teachers that his parents had left and hadn't returned. When asked about the situation, he simply shrugged and went on with his day. What else could he do? His remarkable resilience quickly became the talk of the town. People saw him as a tragic figure, a young man shouldering unimaginable burdens. Parents used Mindaugas as an example for their own children, a model of responsibility and perseverance. Articles were written about his unwavering spirit. Mindaugas, even with all of this, had to move on. He was now the only person on the farm, needing to take care of everything, and there was too much to do. So he started making plans for the family property. He began selling off livestock, looking for someone to rent their land, and even sold his stepfather's old car. When confronted, he explained that he was simply preparing for the worst. If his parents never returned, he had to secure his future. But not everyone was convinced. As time passed, whispers of doubt began to spread. While some saw a grieving son trying to survive, others noticed something far stranger. Mindaugas didn't seem heartbroken at all. In fact, some claimed he seemed lighter, almost relieved. However, there was no struggle, no signs of forced entry, no desperate calls for help. His family had simply disappeared. And now, with the village starting to turn on him and all of this mystery weighing, Mindaugas felt weird. Then, one night, a neighbor saw something she couldn't ignore. She had gone to check on Mindaugas and found him sitting alone, staring at the floor. His eyes were dry, but his face was twisted into an unreadable expression. He looked lost, not in sorrow, but in thought, like someone piecing together a puzzle. And yet, when she spoke to him, he simply smiled. Maybe Mindaugas, at this moment, felt truly defeated. Or maybe... While Mindaugas was the perfect son, the ideal student, the responsible young man left to fend for himself, how much more can he take? The whole village was torn apart, whether Mindaugas had anything to do with the disappearance. However, investigators would soon discover, behind his quiet demeanor lay a secret so horrifying it would shock an entire nation. Every bit of Mindaugas' story and actions were fake, planned, and cold. It all began with a single crack in a seemingly perfect story. A perfect monster hiding behind these eyes. Now, after weeks of disappearance, came the first real crack in the story. A well-known Lithuanian psychic, Pranciškus Sabaliauskas, was brought to the scene by a relative of the missing family. As he walked around the Daunoras household, he made a chilling statement. "The answer is here. This is the son's doing." It was a shocking accusation. Up until that moment, Mindaugas has been the village's golden boy. But now, suspicion has been planted. And while law enforcement initially dismissed the physics claim, the villagers could no longer ignore the uneasy feeling that something was deeply wrong. Investigators began taking a closer look at Mindaugas' behavior. What they found only deepened their concerns. Mindaugas overall became more relaxed. Some classmates even remarked that he was smiling more, joking more. The biggest red flag for most was that Mindaugas started selling off his family livestock, something he likely wouldn't have done if he truly believed his parents were still coming back. "I need to prepare for the future. I have to survive." It was logical, practical even. But was it the reaction of a grieving son? The deeper authorities looked, the more unsettling details they uncovered. The Daunoras' home, despite being on a farm, was impeccably clean. There were no signs of struggle, no misplaced items, nothing out of order. In fact, it was too orderly. For a house that belonged to a family of 5, including 3 children, it was almost unnaturally spotless. No dirty dishes in the sink, no piles of laundry, no half-finished meals left behind. It was as if someone has taken the time to erase every trace of normal life. But even with all these suspicions building up, where was the family? Then, there was the well. Behind the house, near the barn, stood an old well, one that has recently been sealed with a thick layer of concrete. Mindaugas explained that he and his stepfather had closed it up before the family's disappearance. "Water was leaking into the garage," he said. "We had to seal it." A reasonable explanation, but something about it didn't sit right with investigators. Why would a rural family, especially one struggling financially, waste resources sealing a well in early spring? Why was the concrete mixed inside the house rather than near the well itself? And most importantly, why had no one in the village heard about this supposed repair job before? It was a small town, everybody knew each other, so repairs being unnoticed wasn't clicking right. The authorities decided there was only one way to find out. They brought in equipment to break open the concrete slab. As the first sledgehammer struck the hardened surface, the vibration shook the house. Mindaugas stood nearby, watching, his expression unreadable. Blow after blow, the concrete began to crack. And then, something horrifying. A glimpse of fabric, a pillow, a human limb, and finally, the unmistakable stench of death. The truth, buried beneath nearly a meter of solid concrete, was finally coming to light. Mindaugas had watched in silence the entire time. He had never once tried to stop them, never reacted. Then, as the remains of his family were uncovered, he simply muttered one word. "They took us." A quiet acknowledgement, a slip of a tongue, the final confirmation of what the police already suspected. The boy, who had fooled an entire village, was no grieving son. He was a cold-blooded murderer. And the most terrifying part, the worst details, are yet to come. The moment the concrete was broken open, the case against Mindaugas Daunoras was no longer built on suspicion. It was fact. The remains of his stepfather, mother, and little sister lay beneath the hardened slab, concealed with calculated precision. As forensic teams worked to recover the bodies, they started to piece together what had really happened on that horrible night. Mindaugas has been planning this for weeks, possibly months. It all came down to money, his growing need for wealth, his resentment towards his mother, and a desperate desire for control over his future. His stepfather, Jurgis, has always been the one to discipline him, the one who made the decisions. His mother had never been affectionate with him. And then there was his younger sister, Ruta, an innocent child caught in the middle. On that fateful night, the family had gone to sleep as usual, unaware that their son had already decided their fate. Investigators determined that Jurgis was the first to die. He had been stabbed multiple times, his body showing signs of a struggle. Danutė, his wife, was next. Her injuries suggested a frenzied attack, as if she had woken up and fought back. But what happened to Ruta was the most horrifying revelation of all. Mindaugas had initially tried to strangle her, but when that failed, he carried the terrified 10-year-old to the well. She was still alive when he threw her in. The forensic report confirmed it. Her cause of death wasn't strangulation or blunt force trauma. It was drowning. She had struggled. She had fought to survive. And in the darkness of that cold stone well, she had died all alone, with an image of her beloved brother as this monster burned into her final moments. I try not to break character, but God, Jesus. After the murders, Mindaugas spent hours meticulously cleaning the house. He disposed of bloodied clothes and bed linens, even reapplying fresh wallpaper in the bedroom to cover up any lingering traces of violence. Then, he set his final plan into motion. He mixed the concrete, he filled the well, he sealed his family beneath it, and when it was all done, he went to sleep. The next morning, he woke up, got dressed, and carried on with his life as if nothing had ever happened. For weeks, he attended school, tended to the farm, and played the role of a dutiful son left behind. If not for the investigation, if not for the cracks in his demeanor, he might have gotten away with it. Now, remember when I said it was a family of 5? Well, one of the most disturbing elements of the case was the question of whether Mindaugas' older sister, Inga, knew what he had done. She had been away at school when the murders happened, but when she returned home, she didn't seem shocked by the disappearance of her parents and younger sister. In fact, when police searched the home, they found letters Mindaugas and Inga had written to relatives in the US, asking for help moving to America, letters they had never sent. Mindaugas later confessed that he had told Inga everything. According to his statement, they had made plans to sell the house and land, using the money to start a new life abroad. But when Inga was questioned, she denied knowing anything. Legally, she was protected. Lithuanian law allowed her to refuse to testify against a family member. Was she a victim, or was she part of the cover-up? The truth was never fully determined. But if you don't question the disappearance of your mom and little sister, I think it paints a certain picture. In 1997, Inga succumbed to blood cancer at the young age of 24. In 1996, Mindaugas Daunoras stood trial. Despite his young age, just 18 years old, he was found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder. His sentence? Death. At the time, Lithuania still had capital punishment, and Mindaugas became the youngest person in the country to receive the death penalty. But before his execution could take place, Lithuania abolished the death penalty. His sentence was reduced to life in prison. For most, that would have been the end of the story. But for Mindaugas, there was one final chapter left to write. Prison didn't break Mindaugas. He continued his studies, learned English, and wrote letters to his grandmother. He never expressed remorse for what he had done, but something was eating away at him. On August 15, 2000, at just 24 years old, Mindaugas Daunoras was found dead in his prison cell. He had taken his own life. Next to his body were 3 letters, one to his grandmother, one to a Lithuanian politician he had corresponded with, and one to the prison warden. In them, there were no confessions, no apologies. The letters provided a glimpse into the mind of a troubled young man who had experienced immense trauma and turmoil. His final words offered well wishes and pleas for fresh vegetables, revealing a particular mix of the mundane and the profound. While the letters offered little clarity on the motivations behind his actions, they portrayed a complex individual struggling to navigate the depths of his own emotions. After Mindaugas' death, the Daunoras family home was abandoned. No one wanted to buy a house where such horrors had occurred. Eventually, it was dismantled piece by piece until nothing remained. Today, there is only an empty field where the house once stood. The only traces of what happened there is in the memories of those who lived through it. The case of Mindaugas Daunoras remains one of the most chilling in Lithuania's history, not just because of the brutal nature of the crime, but because of the terrifying reality it revealed. Sometimes, the most horrifying monsters aren't strangers lurking in the dark. They're the ones we trust the most. And sometimes, you have to be careful while closing your eyes in your own home. Even decades later, Mindaugas' crime raises chilling questions. Was it all just about the money? Or was there something much deeper? Something we may never fully understand? If you found this case as chilling as we did, let us know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think truly motivated Mindaugas Daunoras? Could there have been any warning signs? And if you want to hear more true crime stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new case. Stay safe, stay aware, and I'll see you in the next one.